Hello everyone, I'm Kibitz and welcome to a new Satisfactory Tips video, where today it's gonna be a game changer, brother, because I'll be going over all the ways you can help increase your FPS in the game. So if you save a frame, leave me a like. So I'm sure most of you guys have run into this problem with this game. It's early access, it's a factory game, and when you go mega with things, oh boy, the game starts to get a little chunky. And usually by the end game, once you got a mega base built and going, oh man, the frames are going too. And even with a supercomputer, you're gonna be having a bad time. And even I have some problems with this game. I have a GTX 2080 Ti, 32 core CPU, and I run this game on a solid state drive. But there's no way to escape the frame pain. But keep in mind, this game is still in early access. I know, it's insane how much there is in the game, but it's still early access. It's crazy, but you gotta remember that, right? And of course, the game is gonna be fully optimized if it isn't done yet, because who knows? New update comes out, half the game's changed, and then all of the previous optimizations that were done are worthless. So keep in mind that the game won't be fully optimized until it's in its 1.0 version. Fortunately though, there are plenty of ways to increase your FPS in the game right now. However, you gotta first know where you're at. And if you wanna see your FPS in game, what you have to do is press Ctrl-Shift-L on your keyboard, and then the tilde key, and that opens up the command console. And if you type stat FPS in the command console, and press enter, your in-game FPS appears in the top right. And you can use that to kinda go around your world and measure how things are going. So with diagnosing FPS problems, that's a pretty handy tool to have. And of course, as you go around your bees and look in different areas, you can start to tell where you're running into FPS problems. Like specifically, I know one place in my base that's real bad, and that's in my main train station beneath my base. Like in here, the FPS is all good and stuff until there are these hiccups. Now I'm not sure if these are because of just the game's coding, or just my computer's like, dying. But yeah, things get pretty rough down here. So after seeing my FPS kind of go crazy down here, I was able to diagnose it as a problem. So to start things off then, I'll show you stuff that you can do in-game to improve your FPS, and then we'll dive into the most optimized settings to improve your FPS. And the first thing here is pretty obvious, but every single thing you build, every platform, every belt, causes a little tiny bit of lag. So once you start getting into mega base type territory and have like over 100,000 platforms and belts, things will start to go oof. And there's not much you can really do about that. However, in my first playthrough in update 1, there was a trick where you could cover your belts that were outside of your base just with a platform. So you'd go around them and you'd just add in a few more foundations here and cover the belt up with something. And of course, like I said, adding in more objects causes a little bit more lag, but at least in update 1, it was a net positive to cover the belts, so then the game didn't have to render in what exactly was on the belts when they're moving and grooving. So at least back then, it was a net positive. But of course, this is update 3 now, and the game's changed a lot. Like, we literally have another form of matter we can play with, so that might not work nowadays. But if you're truly desperate, that might help just a little bit. Also in-game, windows can cause a bit of a problem. So if you build a ton of windows, like a super massive wall, depending on your settings, they can cause huge issues. There's a little bit of a reflection that they have to do, and that causes a little bit extra lag. And also, when you get far away, the windows like see-throughness and reflections deload. So as we walk back here, eventually, they're gonna start to gloss over, and after a little while, you won't be able to see through them anymore. And this helps a lot with the windows and their lag reduction. However, if you have a huge tower of glass and then you run full speed into it, it can cause a huge issue because you're loading in all of the see-through glass at once. This is one of the bigger issues with my hub here, because whenever I come back to my storage room, on both sides of my storage room, I have these absolutely beautiful Hypertube hubs, but they count as glass. So whenever they load and unload, I get the big oof. But honestly, there's a point at which you kind of suck it up, because holy, some things are worth it. And also, once things actually load in, they're fine. And then another relatively simple thing that you can do in your world is you can just keep your trains off. The trains, when they start and when they stop, cause a lot of particles that load in, so if you just have them always paused, you're in a good spot. So for example, if you had a new project you wanted to build and it was lagging a little too much, you can turn all of your machines off, turn the trains off, and then your FPS will be doing a little bit better. So most of the time when I'm playing the game, I just pause all of my trains and my trucks and stuff like that, and restart them when I actually need the production, just so things run smoother. And speaking of trucks, trains, and transport methods, the least laggy transport method is belts. Just straight up, belts are best. But please don't take that as you shouldn't use trains in this game. They are a ton of fun, in fact my favorite thing to mess around with. So what I am saying is use them a little sparingly, if you're running into huge issues. Anyway though, those are the things that I do in-game to try and save on FPS. There might be more ways. If you know any more, let me know in the comments below. And a huge shout out to Zin Digital for helping me out with the settings for this game, because he used to work on the Unity engine and told me exactly what to do here. So I'm really just gonna be regurgitating what he said to me, and the results have been phenomenal. Like 40% increase in my ability to play the game and how smooth the game runs. So we're gonna turn off stat FPS. All you have to do, by the way, is just type in the same command into the console and it turns it off. And then let's go over my settings here. And here they all are. But please keep in mind, these settings are for my personal computer. Your computer might have like a ton of other things that you could do to improve things, or some of these settings might not work the best with your computer. So you still have to do a little bit of messing around, but take this as a template for what you can do. But we'll go through each of the settings here. So of course, first off, resolution 1920 by 1080. I need to make those YouTube videos, brother. Very important. And also keep full screen ticked on. This unloads certain GUI elements, and if you have a dedicated GPU, it optimizes on an upscaled render method. But also, I've just heard everywhere on the internet, full screen, always better. And then with VSync, you just want to have that off, because once you're running your game at under 60 FPS, it's kind of irrelevant. And then things start getting a little spooky from here on out. And it would seem that texture quality isn't that important. Like you can have this on ultra, you can have it on low. It doesn't have a huge effect on your FPS. But personally, I keep it on medium because I live stream and I make videos with OBS, and keeping the textures on medium helps on that front. So if you're just playing the game individually, it doesn't exactly matter what texture quality you have on. But shadow quality super does. Have this on medium or low. Now in my case, I keep things on medium because once you switch over to low, the game becomes the hot poop. I'm not a fan of low shadows. But it is technically the best thing you can do for your FPS. So keep that in mind. But again, because of YouTube video stuff, I need to keep that on medium. Yeah, shadow quality affects everything significantly because there's lighting issues with the game sometimes. And from everything you build, it emits some kind of small shadow. And by turning the shadows on low, essentially off, you save on a lot of the game's processing power. Because with Satisfactory, it's not just your computer, but the game's coding itself. So sometimes, especially if you're in my position with a supercomputer, you just have to help the game itself. And there's not much you can do on the equipment side. Now, post-processing is an interesting one, and a little bit tricky. Similar to the shadow quality. So usually, I keep it on medium, and I just turn motion blur off. Similar thing, it's like when it's on low or off, it's horrific. The game just does not look good. So I definitely want to keep it on medium, but then, of course, motion blur, bleh, turn that off, and it becomes custom at that point. And also, according to Zin, post-processing is amazing, but eats resources like no other, which is really surprising because I always thought shadow quality was like the biggest thing, but according to him, post-processing. Anyway though, after motion blur is off, anti-aliasing on medium, and this messes with the edges of objects and things like that. And like post-processing and shadow quality, you can have it on low, but the game will look like big poop. So a nice compromise is medium. Now as for VFX, I usually keep this on low because it helps out the most. And I don't really care about the VFX in the game, personally. It's not like a big make or break. but it apparently doesn't have a massive impact on the game no matter what setting you use. And apparently most only see a 5% CPU spike when you go up each quality level in VFX. So another 5%, another 5%, another 5%. Apparently. I have not measured this one, personally, and like I said, I don't really care about it too much, so I keep it on low. Now foliage quality, I keep on medium. Again, this is mainly a YouTuber thing and wanting the game to look pretty, but of course you can go to low. It doesn't really matter that much. It's kind of the same deal with VFX quality, wherein it's more of a personal preference thing. Like, definitely when you're working inside a giant factory, you can keep this on low and have no problems, because you're not seeing any plants, of course. But maybe when you're adventuring, you want to put it on medium. Ooh, but the next one's a big spicy boy, the view distance. So the view distance determines where the detail kind of tapers off in your game. So with on medium, you can see the view distance kind of ends about here. And the detail gets a little bit more meh past there. Of course, you put it on far, and the details continue out much further. Go figure. That's the view distance. Let's put it on ultra, just to see the difference here. But yeah, you can see that the view distance, I can hardly even tell, to be perfectly honest. Really? That's ultra? Maybe other settings are affecting this. Generally speaking though, it loads in more stuff when you have the view distance on like a higher setting. So, like with other things, I keep it on medium. Near, of course, if you're super desperate. So after view distance, field of view, that's just a personal preference, doesn't really affect much. Of course, I guess if you have like a wider field of view, you load in more stuff in your vision, so that causes more lag. I'm not sure about that, but just logically, it seems to make sense. I personally don't mess with that though, because, you know, video game recordings, but you can if you want. And hierarchical Z buffer occlusion. Like, what even is that, right? But apparently it has something to do with changing your POV into a pyramid shape instead of a cone, or vice versa. Honestly, even with an explanation, I don't understand it because I'm the big dumb. Generally speaking though, just keep it off. However, if you do have an older graphics card, it might help. This is definitely something you should Google, alongside with your graphics card, to find out if it's worth it for you. But again, generally speaking, just turn it off. And then LOD dithering. That's another weird one, eh? This is one you actually always want to have enabled. Don't know why I had it disabled. But yeah, you want to have this always enabled because it lowers the resolution of things furthest away from your point of view, so it makes less of an impact on your GPU, i.e. part of your computer. So just all around, general good thing to have on. And then contact shadows don't actually matter with us, because with our shadow quality on medium, you can barely see an effect. So it's just best to turn it off. And also, according to Zin, this setting like eats through your RAM and stuff if you have it enabled, so definitely turn that off if you're having FPS issues. And then after you've changed all these settings and applied them, turn your game off and on again. This flushes your VRAM, and you'll really start to notice the FPS effects once you restart your game. But yeah, with these settings all enabled, I gain like an extra 10 FPS playing the game, 20 FPS sometimes, and a lot less like stutters like that. Like you can see right here, where I run through like the laggiest part of my base, there's those few stutters. Before, I'd get to this point, and just be like, game trugging, can't survive. And now I can just run through the whole space. Generally okay. Like I said again, every little thing you add in adds that little bit of lag, and I have a 500 hour plus save file here, so eventually you're gonna run into issues if you do stuff like I do. Anyway though, those are all the FPS tips I got for you today. So again, if you found this video helpful, remember to leave a like, maybe even subscribe for more Satisfactory tips, and you can check out my Satisfactory Let's Play. But regardless, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and bye-bye.